Welcome back. Would you put up with a longer flight to burn less jet fuel and reduce emissions? That is one of a number of recommendations scientists at the University of Cambridge have put forward to try to help the aviation industry reach net zero by 2050. They say that if aircraft flew 15% slower, they would burn 5 to 7% less jet fuel. That would add around 50 minutes to a transatlantic flight. Aviation does account for 2 to 3% of global CO2 emissions, so it's a serious issue. With me is the travel journalist and broadcaster Simon Calder, and also here Finlay Asher, an aerospace engineer and member of Safe Landing. That's a global community of aviation workers who act from within the sector to tackle the problem of aviation within the climate. So welcome to you both. Thank you very much for being with us. Let me start with you, Finlay, if I would. Can you talk to me about the science here and where this has come from?
Sure. So thanks for having me on. So I think the first thing to say is that this isn't just about having our existing fleet of aircraft flying slower. That wouldn't help. What we need to do is we need to design aircraft from scratch to fly slower. Basically, the problem is drag. A slower flight speed means lower drag force acting on the aircraft. Now, drag is proportional to speed squared. That's the only equation I'll cover tonight, I promise. But the point is, the faster that you go, the more effort that's required, and it gets a lot greater. So think of it like you're swimming in water. You know, if you slow down and swim slower, the energy required by your arms and legs is a lot less. This is true of aircraft as well, going through the air. You get aircraft level improvements and benefits from this as well. So if you think about the sweep on modern aircraft, that's because you're flying close to the speed of sound. As you reduce your speed, that allows you to design the aircraft with straighter, thicker wings. That improves aerodynamic and structural efficiency. So yeah, something we're massively in favor of. I think we should be going all out to improve efficiency. And this is one of the tricks that we have if we decide to do it.
We will talk about the customer in a second with Simon, but what about the airlines? How receptive are they to this? Because I know travelling on short-haul flights, they're in, they're out, they don't want to be on the ground very long, and they want to be covering lots of stops in a day. That's where the profit is. So why would they want to get there slower?
So this is the problem. This is what's been holding, I think, aerospace manufacturers back and airlines back. I would say that fundamentally, though, like the cost of fuel is just too cheap. So the cost of staff and ground crew and everything else, by flying slower, taking a bit longer, you outweigh that. And as you say, you maybe can do less flights in a day, although it's not that much slower. So that really has been the sticker. But I think the thing to really focus our minds here is that fossil fuel use is going to have to rapidly reduce. We're going to need to remove subsidies for that. The cost of burning fossil fuels will have to increase, and all of the alternatives are massively more expensive. So we need to be thinking ahead with that longer term view. And once you do that, you realise that every single efficiency gain counts, because it'll be really hurting airlines in 10 or more years' time.
So what about customers, Simon? Are they climate conscious? Of course they pay a tax for climate change. Are they happy to pay it? And would they be happy to travel slower?
In my experience, travellers will always say what they think is the right answer in surveys. So they would say, of course, I don't mind taking an extra 50 minutes to get from London to New York. But in fact, if you've got somebody who says, actually, we're going to go there at the usual old speed, they would go for that. We're also seeing the development of Son of Concorde. A new company, Boom Supersonic, is getting really quite close to commercial flight, which of course is going exactly the opposite way in terms of what people who are concerned about the impact of aviation would like. The aviation industry is going to say two things. First one is, look, we're trying to get hold of more modern, more efficient aircraft, and part of the University of Cambridge study is saying fleet replacement is really important. We're trying to replace our fleet, but as the BBC's reporting, Boeing's got a strike, Airbus has got an order book going ahead 10 years. It's actually really difficult to replace those old planes. And furthermore, there's also this term about don't use long distance planes for shorter distance flights.
Yeah.
Now, that's significant in the context of, for instance, every day British Airways and Virgin Atlantic will do little short hops in the Caribbean, maybe 100, 150 miles. That's extremely wasteful with a wide body jet. And actually, you could say, well, everyone should get off the plane and get onto a boat. That would be good. But most of the time, these little, the Airbus A320 and the Boeing 737, which are the absolute ground fundamentals of aviation, they're doing odd little 200-mile hops and then 2,000-mile hops.
What if I said to you, though, Simon, here is a ticket which is much cheaper because we're burning less fuel? Might the passenger be more enthused then?
Yes, although I would say, Christian, how are you managing to do that much cheaper? Because, of course, the aircraft is costing more. You're getting less utilisation out of it all. You're having to pay the crew more. All in all,
because they're doing longer hours.
Less efficient.
Yeah.
So
plus, what about I mean, obviously, air traffic control, they stack them high. Everybody's in and out of airports on a very strict schedule. So if you were then delaying it, does that affect those?
Well, if you look at Europe, which is more crowded than it ever has been, partly because of the pressure of the Ukraine war in squeezing airspace, it's very tricky anyway. If you've got more aircraft up there for longer, that's a problem. But actually, the whole of European airspace could be overnight modernised, and suddenly you would find that aircraft are flying much more direct routes, far less congestion. But I'm afraid it's been on the table, a single European sky, for about 25 years, and we're no nearer a solution.
So, Finlay, do we need more stick than carrot?
Well, absolutely. So we've looked at this topic in detail, been looking at the reasons for why we aren't pursuing this. And it's not just this. It's also the main aerospace manufacturers taking a jump to more radical aircraft configurations, like a blended wing body, for example, more radical engine designs, or even, hybrid, hydrogen or electric aircraft. And part of the problem is that fossil fuel currently is just too cheap. It isn't taxed, and also the emissions pricing is effectively very low. And that just isn't providing the price signal to encourage manufacturers to get on and innovate and compete for big efficiency improvements that are required. Now, from an aviation worker perspective, we're really worried about this because there is long timescales in aviation. It takes 15 years to design and develop a new aircraft, test it for certification and get it into service. So we're basically at 2040 now. And we're really worried that we're going to have to massively reduce flying, which isn't good for workers. However, if you've got to do that and you do fly slower, that is an increase in employment. It's more efficient. And there's more jobs for aviation workers as well. So
there's the upside.
Yeah.
Listen, before I let you go, Simon, I do have to ask you about the other story we're covering tonight, which, of course, is these announcements from airlines that they won't be flying to Israel or indeed to Lebanon. What are you hearing, and is it under review?
Yes, British Airways has said they're not going to be flying in for the next 48 hours. They've been running a slightly curious operation which involves flying an aircraft to Cyprus, to Larnaca, and then doing a short hop from there so they don't have to have crew overnighting in Tel Aviv. They are joined by Wizz Air, which has also said it's pulling out of Amman in Jordan temporarily, and the entire Lufthansa group, which includes Swiss, Austrian Airlines, and also Brussels Airlines, as well as the German national airline. They've said they're not going into Tel Aviv until the earliest, the 12th of October.
So, but so if you were based in Lebanon right now, if you were an expat, your advice would be?
Well, I mean, I imagine that the airport at Beirut is very busy. People trying to get out as soon as they can, and quite possibly the same in Tel Aviv. Ben Gurion International Airport in Tel Aviv still open, and El Al still flying in and out.
Okay, Simon Calder, lovely to see you. Finlay Asher, thank you very much for your thoughts this evening. Thank you.
Thank you.